I began by asking him how this, the 27th meeting in nearly 3 decades, would deliver a lowering of greenhouse gas emissions when the others have not.
The bottom line really is, and there are some hopeful signs, the United Nations are saying that we are turning the curve somewhat, but not fast enough, but that the efforts of humans and human behaviour is changing. Also, the International Energy Agency now can see demand for fossil fuels peaking within the next 15 years. Can we accelerate that? We should. And in Ireland, that means offshore wind more quickly than perhaps we had targeted. So I don't want to give the impression that it's all doom. There is a very serious situation facing us, but we are turning the tide. The problem is we're turning the tide too slowly in respect of this. Climate change impacts are accelerating. We need to move faster to change behaviour. And in Ireland, that means issues like offshore wind, more public transport, more electric vehicles, greater retrofitting of housing. And we're doing all of that, more environmentally friendly farming. We're doing all of that funded by the carbon tax. And that's why we had to take that decision to give us the funds to enable us to really do things that can change the situation in relation to the impacts of climate change in Ireland. We have to play our part like every other country.
But you mentioned there further wind energy. The wind industry here would say they're very concerned with the delays in getting approvals and planning applications through the system. So there's one thing making pledges and making targets and putting them in place, which everybody will say that's great, but it's another thing actually getting it done, isn't it?
It's a big challenge, but I think the wind industry would acknowledge that we passed legislation well over a year ago now to create a new permitting framework for infrastructure like offshore wind farms. So we are setting up a new agency, MARA, to deal with that, and that is work underway. We've had a fundamental review of the planning code over the last 12 months, and the fruits of that will be published in the next number of weeks in the form of a new planning act. And we will be setting up a new environmental court within our court system also. Again, to bring more specialism into play in terms of dealing with environmental and climate change issues.
But yet our greenhouse gas emissions increased yet again last year. 4.7% they increased by.
Well, that's all. Yeah, but obviously that's something that is due to previous years, if you like. You can't turn it all around in 1 year. And the point is we're making more fundamental decisions now that over time will have a very significant impact on reducing temperature, reducing emissions into the atmosphere. And we do have to move more quickly. I acknowledge that point on issues like offshore wind and other issues also to make sure that we can do it in a more accelerated way. But I do believe that the foundations have been laid over the last targets we have set for every sector of our economy. We have created the foundations that will make a difference over the next decade, and we are still on target in terms of electricity generation by about 80% generated by wind by 2030, and that is our target, and we're going to go after that and have a relentless focus on these issues, as well as supporting countries who are right now facing survival in respect of the climate change impacts.
How much is Ireland prepared to give to those countries, those poorer countries that are suffering because of how we in wealthy countries live?
Well, we have committed to get to a target of 225 million per annum in terms of climate finance to play our part in supporting countries who are in deep difficulty. And today I attended a food security forum where clearly the situation in Africa was laid bare in terms of the enormous challenges now this year in terms of the number of millions and millions of people who face hunger because of a range of issues. COVID, the war in Ukraine, climate change, all combining, as the World Food Programme said, to create probably the worst scenario that we've ever experienced in decades.
Before we're out of time, I just want to ask you about possible tech layoffs. There are reports today that Meta, the parent company of Facebook, may be laying off staff. Are we overly reliant now on these tech companies, both in terms of employment and in terms of the corporation tax income they provide for this country?
Well, first of all, we've no definitive news in respect of Meta, but I would say this, that irrespective of what company may have to make decisions, workers have to be treated with respect and with dignity, and proper protocols and industrial relations consultations have to take place. We have a diversified economy. we have a wide range of jobs created in many different sectors. Of course, the technology sector is a particularly important one. But again, I think we've been through difficulties in the past, different times in relation to that industry and other industries, but we have a strong resilience, and the issue really for us is to understand what is happening out there globally, understand the realities in terms of how that impacts on companies, and then make plans in terms of how we absorb any hits, but also opportunities will come again in terms of companies like that and other areas. So over the last 2 years, we've been meeting many companies who have invested in Ireland, who continue to invest in Ireland, and are very positive about Ireland as a place to invest in. They're very positive about our workforce, our productivity, and our capacity to deliver. And I think that's the broader story and the broader narrative. However, globally, the world is in a difficult space right now because of the war in Ukraine and other issues, and we export all that we produce. So clearly, that will impact on us in time also. We've got, however, to make sure we build the resilience to withstand any challenges that are coming our way.
OK, Taoiseach Micheál Martin from Sharm el-Sheikh in Egypt at COP27. Thanks for speaking to us on the 6-1 News.